I can't say this bit is particularly about filmmaking itself or about the industry of filmmaking itself, but it is about being human, and so much of being a storyteller is, if not everything to an extent, is being human. Even the business aspect is about being human. And the thing I've been thinking a lot about today in particular is loneliness. We are lonely creatures who want to be in a pack. I believe that is human nature. And sure, there are those who stand outside of the norm, who may not feel this way, but generally speaking, if you are a human, you experience loneliness. And if you are someone who doesn't easily experience loneliness, you certainly have at one point in your life, and you can relate to it. I hate the feeling of loneliness. I've always hated it. I have been someone who has felt alone all his life, whether it was in the social groups in which I ran, whether it was even in my own family at times, whether it was because I lived on my own and I didn't really have anyone around me. I didn't have a lot of friends, or I was jumping job to job, or I was in a career where I didn't know a lot of people at first, or on a job site where, or a production where I hadn't really worked with these folks before, or maybe the people that I did know weren't there with me. And just universally across the board, I have been someone who has fled from loneliness. I have packed my calendar with doing things, going out, having activities, focusing on maybe writing, which is of course a lonely, solitary activity in itself. But in terms of just the feeling of loneliness, when I'm writing, it's something that sort of the writing and the creativity and the work that comes with writing can override that loneliness or keep that loneliness at bay. And this is something that just I've seen as a crutch my whole life. And recently, I'd say in the last few years, I've decided to turn that around. I'm at a place now where I am accepting everything about myself that is on the surface good or bad, whatever people or the media or social media might persuade you to think that we can't say we're lonely, that it's not cool, don't share that. That's all BS. You're human, we're human, and these are normal human things. Why do we shy away from these topics? Why do we not like to discuss them? And I decided to embrace my loneliness rather than, when it reared its ugly head, try to immediately divert my attention. I decided, you know what? No. Sit there, be lonely, accept it. Face it. Face your loneliness. Don't be afraid of it, and learn to get comfortable with it. Learn what there is about loneliness that is human and that is important. And so an example of this is, I used to be terrified, especially to go to a party where I didn't know anybody, or go to someplace public like a bar where I didn't know anyone in the bar, or someone that I was meeting there was late and I was early. I always felt so anxious just being there by myself, being alone in a bar. I just felt like people were watching me. I just felt uncomfortable. My posture was weird. What was I doing? Was I on my phone too much? Was I not on my phone enough? I just, I got so in my head about it that I decided, you know what? Let's start there. You're going to go to a bar. You're going to have a drink. In fact, bring a book. Bring a book to a bar on a Friday night where it's hopping and people are having a great time and they're being loud and they're there with their, significant others. They're there with their friends. They're there with their colleagues, whatever it may be. There's a lot of hubbub going around, and just be okay being there. Nobody's looking at you. Nobody's wondering what your deal is. People might notice you and people might have a thought here or there, but you're not their focus. What I've learned is the loneliness isn't that scary. It really isn't. And I know I have great people in my life that if I have an issue and that there's loneliness around a larger issue that I can talk to. So that's not the loneliness that I'm talking about right now. I'm just talking about being afraid of being by yourself, being afraid of just being present with yourself, especially in a place where there's a lot of social activity happening, And what I found is that moment of loneliness I was so afraid of actually can be quite meditative, and it can be quite eye-opening. And as a creative, as a storyteller, it's such an amazing opportunity to eavesdrop on conversations, to observe others, to see how different people are engaging, see the dynamic of different groups, different couples, and even watching the staff. And I think that if you're a storyteller especially, you are an observer, and what better way than to get out there and observe and not have the distraction of having company with you. And so I highly recommend it, but don't be afraid to be lonely. Don't run from it. It is part of being human, and let it become an opportunity to become more comfortable with yourself.